All right, happy Sunday and St. Patty's Day to everyone. Thank you so much for your lively participation in this first week of the course. Before I forecast the next week, I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page about a couple items, okay? So I'll do a little bit of housekeeping. The first is when it comes to your discussions, please remember to always write the sub question first and then your answer to receive full credit. Okay, so this does not impact your grade for the first week's discussion, but moving forward, I definitely want to see that consistency and making sure that each question of the full question is being answered. Okay. Also, it's important to submit on time. All right, so please be mindful of your deadlines and make sure you're planning ahead. I know a lot of you transitioned from term A to term B quite fast, and so I was pretty lenient with late submissions this week. But moving forward, they will impact your grade. So make sure that you're submitting on time to receive full credit. All right. And lastly, I hope you all have been reaching out to your groups. I wanted to share some tools that may help you communicate better with your teams. And these are actual tools that I use with my own virtual team. So I hope that they'll be helpful for you, okay? So the first one is the well-known Google Doc, right? And for those of you who haven't used Google Doc, the really cool feature about this is that you can add comments like you can in a Microsoft Word document. And you can also see when people are editing it, right? And you guys can edit it at the same time. So it's a living, breathing document that is constantly informing you of what's happening as you go. Okay, so please use this feature. All you have to do is simply share it with your teams, and everyone will have access to the same doc, and you could keep modifying it. It's pretty good tool, especially for this course, because you're basically, you know, every group project is building upon each other, right? Towards this big final project that you'll basically be refining with the feedback that I give. So if you keep it all in one place, it'll be pretty easy for you guys to deliver that final project. And I will talk about it later, but that doesn't mean that you'll be submitting your Google Drive doc to me. You'll be submitting it in a Word document, but this is a good place to start building your project. Okay. Okay. So the next tool that I like to use a lot is Uber Conference. All right, so I'm going to quickly join so you guys can see the features here, but it's actually free, right? You don't have to pay for this service. Someone just needs to initiate it, create an interesting link, right, and send it to your colleagues. But basically, you'll have your own phone line. You can access it through your computer, and I'm going to do view only, only because it will start ringing, right? So as you see here, you'll have an area to screen share, which is awesome. And if I click on here, you can chat with people, you can see who's viewing, you can even record the Uber conference meeting that you're having with your team, just in case someone can't come, right? So there are going to be times where people can't always accommodate and make the times that the team is meeting, right? But instead of stalling and waiting for that person to be able to join, find other ways, use technology to get the best out of your time and your teammates, okay? So I hope this tool helps here. Um, the last feature that I find really, really helpful is Appearant. So it kind of works like Uber Conference, where you have a customized link. It's free, I believe, up to 10 people. But the awesome thing about this is that you can actually see each other, right? So you can do some screen sharing, and also see where you guys are at, actually have that kind of human interaction that we don't normally have in that virtual setting. Okay, so there you have it. You have Appear.in, right? This is the website right here. And then you have Uber Conference. You literally can just Google uberconference.com and it'll come right up. And then most of us should have Google account where we can open up our drive and add a doc into that. Okay, so those are some tools that I hope will be helpful. All right, so let's forecast and look at Unit 2. So you survived the first week of class. Awesome. I hope everyone's feeling good. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on Unit 2. And Unit 2 focuses on various communication methods used to facilitate inclusive initiatives in the workplace. So now that you've kind of gone through the systematic framework and know what levels are impacted, is now really important. Now is a good time to kind of learn how to communicate with those levels. Okay. So the first thing that you'll be doing is doing your reading. The Ferdman text, you have chapter 2, okay? And then we have our first chapter of our book club, okay? So I'll talk about that when we get to the last assignment for this unit. Okay, you also have some optional videos, so feel free to look at those. Those are just going to be more helpful to you if you're having a hard time understanding the content of this particular unit. All right, so let's look at assignment 2A. Okay. So once you read chapter 2, you'll be answering this question. And again, notice that this question has 2 specific sub questions. So these are what I was referring to in the beginning. If you can just add these into your reply, and I will know that you answered them. Okay. So the first one is describe 2 different communication methods that can be utilized to address facts, feelings, and behaviors regarding inclusion in the workplace. All right. And then lastly, give an example or a scenario of how each communication method can be utilized within your organization. So the best way to really learn this content is to apply it to your specific environment, right? And most of you who are in the IO field and want to impact your environment, want to impact your organization, so start using this material and applying it to what you're doing and where you're at right now. Okay, and that's really what we're going to be doing for this particular discussion. I look forward to seeing what you guys are already doing within your organizations and how any of these communication methods can help. Okay, and I see that some of you have started to answer. So great. All right, so let's look at assignment 2B, which I believe is your first team assignment. Okay, so it'll always say team case study project. All right, and then it'll have a different assignment title. Okay, so let's kind of dissect all of this, right? So for this assignment, you and your team will participate in a small group discussion, right? That's initially you're going to participate in the discussion because you need to figure out what organization you'll be examining, right? So this assignment will help you and your teammates get started on your final project, which I've been mentioning for a while now since the beginning, because I just think I find it helpful if you know up front how the course is kind of set up. All right, so if you look at the project, if you haven't looked at the project, please click on this link and you'll be able to see it in full detail, okay? You'll also be able to see how you'll be rating each other throughout the course, because at the end, you do have the opportunity to rate each team member within your specific group, okay? So what are the steps that you're going to take after your team has kind of digested what the final project is going to look like? Well, you'll complete any assigned readings, and it's going to be this way for each team assignment. For this week, it's going to be Google admits it has a diversity problem, right? So this is kind of what you're going to be doing. You're just going to be going onto Google, literally, and finding an organization that has some type of diversity problem. It's usually somewhere in the news. It's usually some type of headline. And we'll talk about if you have any issues finding a particular organization, okay? So once you kind of read that and say, okay, now I know what the aim is here is looking for some type of diversity or inclusion issue in an organization and finding enough articles or enough body of information to dissect and try to analyze what could be done, okay? So then you'll choose a team leader. After that, you'll use the team discussion to confer with your teammates. So if you click here, you can have conversations with your team as well. But I advise Google Docs, Uber Conference, Appear, and get more personal with your team. Okay. And this is what you guys will be discussing. You'll be discussing an organization that's either known for having diversity and inclusion issues or can work on their efforts to create a more inclusive environment. If the group cannot identify an existing organization, you can also create an organization in a realistic that has a within a realistic diversity issue. Okay? So, um I so far have ran this assignment a couple times, and none of the teams have had issues finding an organization, but some have found organizations that have already solved their issues, right? And what I say to those, if you really still want to work on what their issues were, by all means do so, but obviously do not kind of replicate what they have already done. The only way that you can use what they've done is if you're going to critique the, you know, analyze and critique what they've done, and support it with any data that or any content that we've gone over. So if they implemented something and we've talked about the opposite, that would be a good time to talk about it, right? Or if they actually implemented something that supports the literature, that's also a good time to talk about it. But it needs to be adding to the conversation and not just stating what they've done and just saying, okay, great, they did a good job. Please make sure to find some gaps where you can create some impact in that organization if you had the chance to be a consultant, a diversity and inclusion consultant for them. Okay, so I hope that helps. But if you start Googling and just looking for organizations that have diversity and inclusion issues, you will run into a couple. Okay, and each group will have their individual one. So I'm hoping that we don't have two organizations that are the same. But either way, you're all going to be working separately. So it is okay if that happens as well. But we're going to try to avoid that. All right. So once you've answered that question of what organization and you've done your research, the goal is for your team to select an organization that they will be examining for the rest of the course. Once an organization has been selected, identify the areas of the systematic and inclusive framework that should be addressed within this particular organization. So that's going to happen a lot where we go through a topic and we kind of apply it to yourself or just, and your organization, or just look at it within the text and just kind of dissect it, right? Before we jump into actually looking at that specific topic within your organization. So we'll always look at a topic first and then apply it to the organization that you're looking at. So for the systematic inclusive framework, notice that was our first discussion, right? We just kind of looked at it for what it is. Now you're going to have the opportunity with your team to actually apply it to an organization. Okay, so I look forward to seeing what that looks like. And your team leader should submit a summary of the team's overall findings. The summary should include the selected organization, why it has been chosen, and the areas, again, of the systematic and inclusive framework that are involved. Okay? So, now, while your team leader submits the assignment, they do not complete it, right, on their own. It is up to the team on how they want to divide and collaborate and execute the work, okay? Also, when submitting, please ensure that the file name includes the team name and assignment name, okay? So it has to include team name and assignment name so that I know, who submitted. I ask that you do the same at the beginning of your document. If your team decided to leave, the APA title page for the final, just you can do that, but just make sure to include everyone's name in the first two lines of the document at least, okay? So keep in mind, the more work you put up front, the less work you have to do towards the end. I would recommend integrating APA as much as you can from the beginning, but it's not a requirement for these sub-team assignments, right? It is a requirement, however, for your last assignment and for your own midterm, all right? So a couple other things is that submission will be via Word doc, okay? And please do not include your Google Doc links or PDFs. It needs to be in Word because I want to be able to provide feedback. Um, and also, please do not worry about fulfilling a page requirement, right? But rather ensure that you answer the question fully. That's what matters the most. All right. So I hope that answers a couple questions about this particular assignment, right? And for our last assignment, we will have our first book club, right? We'll be holding our first session, our first virtual session. And we will have Christina, Ashley, and Shadeen, and they will be covering our first chapter, Beware of Noah's Ark. So they'll be discussing what were the biggest takeaways from this chapter, what was interesting, shocking, fascinating, right? Um, and how can they apply what they learned from Liz Wood's piece to the content from this unit. Sorry, I was reading something at the same time. But yes, you guys will be covering these three questions, and we will be engaging in discussion and conversation, right? This is a thought-provoking segment of the course that really pushes you to think beyond just the content, all right? But what you truly feel, go through, and what really diversity and inclusion truly is today, okay? So I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. It is still pretty early. It's 2:36 p.m. On my end, and I feel like I have still the rest of the day to go. You guys will be receiving feedback on your systematic framework sometime next week. So just watch out for that. You've all received a grade for your intro and for your book selection. Just watch out for that middle assignment, as I'll be grading and providing feedback throughout the week. All right. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me. And again, have a lovely day. Go outside. It's St. Patty's Day.